Hi, I'm Dr. Mila Brujic, and I'm joined today with Dr. Mark Schaeffer on the OI show, where we're going to be talking about presbyopia is destined for contact lens failure. Thank you, Bausch and Lomb, for the support of this episode of the OI show, where we're really doing a deep dive into the benefits surrounding helping presbyopes manage those contact lens challenges with new innovation. All right, Mark, thanks for being back on the show, buddy. Truly appreciate it. Give everybody a little bit of background on yourself. You're a pretty dynamic guy. I know I see you in the literature. I know I see you at the podium, but tell everybody a little bit more about yourself and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so thanks, Mila, for having me back, right? It's always nice to get asked back again. That's usually a good sign, or at least not a terrible one. But I am Dr. Mark Schaeffer. I'm an optometrist in Birmingham, Alabama. I work at my eye doctor, and one of my roles is now the clinical excellence captain. So my job is to help onboard new optometrists within my eye doctor, to help understand the culture, understand what we're doing, and kind of get them adjusted to life within my eye doctor. I see anything and everything that walks in the door. I had a 2-year-old this week. I had a 92-year-old this week. So anything and everything that can come in the door, we're taking care of. Glasses, contact lenses, ocular disease, you name it, we're taking care of it.
I think that's why this topic fits you so well. One, for the greater role that you have in the organization, and two, because you're a clinician on the ground floor. And that's what's happening with presbyopia. There is a big, what I would call almost a counterintuitive twist when when patients get into presbyopia. So they wear contact lenses and they're successful. And then all of a sudden, when the need for refractive correction spikes up from the ages of 40 to 50, from about 35% of the population to close to 100% of the population needing refractive error, not only do contact lens wearers as a percentage not increase, but it actually drops. It goes the opposite way. Every other age category, Mark, we have this kind of increase for refractive error, and there is again, this matching curve of contact lens wearers
Mhm,
that matches that increased refractive band. So I guess the first question I have is, what's the challenge there, and
mhm.
what's the opportunity for us to get those patients functioning in multifocal or contact lenses for that matter?
Yeah, I think I like starting with the opportunity first. If you don't mind, I'll take the second part first.
Yeah.
I think the opportunity is absolutely massive for us. I think it's one of these areas where patients don't know what they don't know. And a lot of these patients stopped wearing lenses before they became presbyopic. So for them, they didn't even know this was an option. And now they're presbyopic and they're just used to wearing glasses. I think for us, it's hard for us to measure dropout. Like there's no good way for us to metric that, right? Like I can metric year supplies, I can metric exam onlys, I can metric anything else within our data
You can
system.
measure stuff that you do. You can't measure stuff that you don't do.
Correct, but there's no way for us to have a metric on contact lens dropout or patients that would prefer to be in contact lenses. So I think the opportunity is there because patients want this technology. They want to be able to see that. The challenge is educating patients and being able to be proactive about it. And I think there's this weird kind of dichotomy where patients expect doctors to tell them what they're a candidate for, but doctors expect patients to tell us what they want to be a candidate for. So it's almost like neither one of us wants to have this dance. We're just kind of staring at each other like a middle school, like who's going to make the first move, right? And that's the challenge is making that first move because once you get through that inertia, it's all downhill from there. It's all easy in the grand scheme of things. It's just starting the conversation and being able to set the right expectations.
Mark, it's so funny you say that. The Contact Lens Institute actually just put out a survey on this, and it is true to its word what you said. Patients trust most what they hear from doctors, and they're telling these surveyors that they have not heard about multifocal contact lenses as even being an option or on the radar.
Hmm.
So I guess, Mark, I want to do a deeper dive into this. Is there,
Hmm.
is there a reason for this? I mean, is
Hmm.
this something where, again, practitioners are viewing this as an unsuccessful proposition, so they don't want to put time into it? Is it in a busy schedule, something that they don't want to get involved into? Why do you perceive that? And what's the ultimate outcome, or how can that change? How can practitioners help provide these options for these patients?
Yeah, I think all of that is the crux of everything, right? It's like, is there a problem? The answer is obviously yes, right? There's a disconnect. I will say one thing that always intrigues me is patients who tell a surveyor one thing and then in my office have completely wildly different other answers to that, right? And it's like
That happens.
you look at the survey question because I read almost everything I try to, but it was like, how many of you remember being told about multifocal contact lenses? It's like 10%, right? 10% remember being told about this technology by their practitioner. So like you're gonna have people that just don't remember. But at
Mhm.
the same time, that's still a huge number that isn't getting this information. So I think the easiest thing is just mentioning it, right? And I think that's the biggest hurdle that we have. I think we have gotten in our own way, right? We have our routines. We're all busy. We're all trying to get patients seen and evaluated and educated in an appropriate and effective manner. It's hard for us to kind of break that cycle when we have that mentality of this is my exam flow, right? If a patient comes in and they're a glasses exam, right? It's hard for us to go out of our way to then break the cycle of, hey, have you ever thought about contact lenses,
Yeah.
right? And it's hard to do that. Then it's hard because you're trying to work into a flow of, well, how do we convert this patient? Have they ever worn contact lenses? Are we going to have to do insertion removal training? Do I have the staff to pull that in and absorb that? There's this conceived notion of chair time, right? And I think we've both talked about chair time, and time is more valuable in some cases than money, right? That chair time that our patients have is an investment in their future. It's an investment in how we're taking care, and it's an investment in their relationship. And I think it's really important for us to use that time to set the right expectations, to go over what we can do. And that makes everything more efficient. More education on the front end, saves us time down the road so that we can then work these patients into our schedule. There's no good answers for that, but at the same time, it's you have to start somewhere.
So, Mark, let me ask you something, because I think some of the, resistance to multifocal contact lenses is this perceived, what I call clinical baggage. I've been in clinical
Hmm.
for 22 years, and you see that you have experiences with technologies, and then they advance, and sometimes you're a little bit less, or a little bit more, I should say, reluctant to pick up that
Hmm.
new version of the technology because of experiences with predecessor technologies. And to go a step further, multifocal contact lenses really, again, optically, were never an intuitive thing. It's simultaneous vision, again, focusing distance and near optics on the retina at the same time. And this can get hard for patients to understand as well, too, especially when they're used to
Hmm.
glasses having different parts of focus. I mean, how many times have we mentioned multifocal contacts? And they ask us, well, how am I going to see through the different parts of?
Hmm.
So, Mark, how do you go about making this conversation for your patients an efficient one, but one that they have enough understanding where they kind of at least have a rudimentary understanding of what's happening or occurring?
Yeah. I like setting the bar so low we can trip over it, right? That's my goal,
Then you
right?
succeed every time.
Correct, right? Expectations. Because when we set expectations, the patient is more likely to succeed than if they are setting their own expectations, right? We all have a notion of what their vision should be like. And if you ask every optometrist wearing a multifocal contact lenses, they will give you a percentage of functional vision, right? Like we all have heard that. We've all used that. I've shied away from that now, because you don't know until these lenses get on the eye how they're really going to perform. I think that's one of the hard things with this is that failure and success is so subjective, where when we have a phoropter, it's a very easy process, right? It's a very cut and dried for the most part, right? We're always going to have those patients that just like to run themselves around the JCC, That happens. But I think it's important for us to remember that this is something that's happening in real time. Whereas you prescribe a pair of glasses, they get it a week or two later, and then now your opticians are educating them, get out of here. We don't want you to be sitting in here. We just want to make sure that things are okay in here, but wear them in the real world. And I think when you get all of that information at once from the patient, and it takes time to adapt, it can leave a sour taste in our mouths of like, oh, this isn't working, right? It's not, you got to let the lenses do the work for you, but you can't get out in front of yourself. And I think we've seen data that kind of suggests that when you look at all of the clinical trials for all of these multifocals, right? They follow the fit guide directly, right? Explicitly. There is no deviation from that when they are figuring it out. They have such a high percentage of success rate on 1 and 2 lenses. Like, how do they do that, right? What are they doing to get and measure success? And the answer is they're getting out of their own way. They're not trying to do too much on the first visit. They're just putting the lenses, letting the lenses do the work, and then going from there. And that's why you have such high success rates is you follow the fit guide, you let the lenses do the work. And I think that's something that we've had to over index for in previous designs of like really trying to
Yes.
overthink the design and how it works. Like this lens is good for hyperopes, but this lens is better for myopes. But now our technologies are so much farther than where they were even 10 years ago that we've got such great lenses that it's 1 and maybe 2 and done.
So, Mark, are there design options and characteristics and even modalities that's your preferred option when you're dealing with the presbyope?
The answer is whatever works for the patient. But these newer designs and daily disposables tend to be the best, right? They're easy to get in and out of the eye. We don't have those issues of drying out. We don't have end of day discomfort issues because now these lenses are based on materials that are designed to last all day, that have high breathability and decay over T. The other thing is the designs have gotten so much better. So whether you're using the 3-zone progressive from B&L, whether you're using the precision profile, the power profile from Alcon, you've got the binocular simultaneous vision with Cooper Visions, and then you also have the pupil optimized design with AccuViews. Every single one of them, I can go through cases and cases of this one worked better for this patient. And unfortunately, I don't have a good answer as to which one is I I use this one for this patient. It does come down to trial and error, but what I've found is that having these designs have made it so much easier for me to succeed.
Mark, is a daily disposable kind of your first choice option for these patients, assuming that the prescription puts them in candidacy?
Absolutely. I think we should be starting with the daily disposable because we know it's the safest and healthiest alternative. First and foremost, our patient safety has to come first. The second thing is most of these patients may or may not wear these every day. And I think that's the biggest key for us, especially if you're introducing this to patients who haven't thought about contact lenses. They don't know how often they want to wear them. So giving them that versatility, having that maximum performance, you're going to get better results just in general and easier adoption to it. So I love the daily disposables. Again, you have a lot more innovative pieces and technology within top of the line brands that are going to give you that.
Mark, I think you're spot on. I think these designs are so beautifully engineered and designed today. I know that personally with the infused lens, when we put it on the eye, patients can barely feel it. And the
Mm-hmm.
optical zone with the stability in their 3-zone optical design is unbelievable. So it's just provided this high level of comfort and vision. Mark, I do want to ask you one more thing, and this is important because when we're talking about the presbyope, this is becoming an increasingly hot topic, and that is the ocular surface that's there to support the lens. And what special considerations do we need to be taking into account when we are fitting the patient or the presbyopic patient with contact lenses?
The one thing we've taken for granted in this entire conversation leading up till just now is we assume that the ocular surface is intact, right? That it is operating at an optimized level. all of the R&D, all of the research, everything that goes into these optics assumes a perfectly stable corneal surface. Now, that doesn't happen in real life, right? So you look at the populations, patients over 40 are more likely to be having issues of dry, gritty, scratchy. They're more likely to have MGD. They're more likely to have Demodex. They're more likely to have all of these issues that can lead to discomfort on the ocular surface. All of the data that we have on contact lens dropout suggests that comfort is the number one reason. The number two reason being vision, right? Dry eye disease, and this is probably an entire podcast in and of itself. Dry eye is a vision disease first, right? You think about getting a patient behind the phoropter. If they have to blink to make their vision clear, that is the first sign of dry eye disease before any other symptoms. So
Mhm.
if they can't make a stable enough tear film in a phoropter, what do we expect when we put a piece of plastic on the eye that's like 15 times the size of the tear film? It's not going to work. So 75% of the reasons that patients drop out of contact lenses can be tied to ocular surface issues. So in order for us to fit a contact lens, we have to make sure and be really sure that this surface is good enough to handle a contact lens. I've actually heard colleagues say when they do the anterior segment evaluation, they will then say before they put a contact lens on the eye, now that I've cleared your ocular surface for contact lens wear. And I think that's a huge, powerful statement to the patient to say, not only is part of the evaluation just putting a lens on the eye, but it's evaluating the surface to make sure it can handle the rigors of a lens and what we're asking it to do.
So Mark, I think it's so important with, just like you said, and it's important to set expectations as well too, because if somebody's ocular surface isn't prepared for an additional stressor, which a contact lens inherently is, again, there's designs that have mitigated some of that stress, but the patient has to know before you start with the contact lens fitting, because then they know it's a problem that they have,
Mm-hmm.
you're actually going to help them with. And it's important for them to understand that it's not your problem. It's a deficiency in the way that their ocular surface is functioning.
Mm-hmm.
And you're actually going to help manage that so that they can get into lenses. People have actually
Mm-hmm.
come to us because they want to wear contact lenses and they couldn't, and they want to know what they can do to make it so that they can wear lenses. And usually the first step is repairing the ocular surface and creating a level of some level of homeostasis or better functionality before the lens is placed on the eye. So I couldn't agree with you more with your philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think, Mark, we've just created the next podcast that we're going to have you back on, which is ocular surface considerations for contact lenses, which we will definitively have you back for, my friend.
I appreciate that.
Mark, any final thoughts for the audience?
Your patients are already coming into our practices day in and day out. Our patients do not know what they do not know. And I think that's an important thing for us to remember is that we're their experts. We're supposed to be up on this information. And anytime we have the ability to flex our expertise and tell patients what is out there, even if they say no, that's a valuable use of your time, right? Even if they say no to daily disposables or no to contact lenses or they don't want to try a multifocal, that's great. That's fine with me. But I don't want, the last thing I want, I should say, is for my patient to come and see me, go out into the world and hear about a lens or a technology from someone who is not an expert.
So
Whether
true.
that's TikTok, whether that's the Facebook, whether that's
Wait,
a
wait,
group
wait,
of
wait, wait. You don't
friends,
think you can get expert information from TikTok?
you can, but is that where it's actually going to come from, right? Like you lose the message, right? You lose the ability to control the narrative and control the message and control that relationship in a positive way when you can't be the one to introduce this technology.
Agreed. Mark, thank you. Thank you for being on the show. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and connect with you on clinical topics.
Always great to be here. You know where to find me. I'll be in the streets.
And thank you all for joining us on this episode of the OI Show, where we talked about presbyopia patients destined for failure. What a great discussion about really fostering and meeting unmet need in the presbyopic patients. Bausch and Lomb, thank you for supporting this episode of the OI Show.